that the woman would ask to the man, or that the man would ask to the woman for that matter, is, do you know the difference between right and wrong behavior definitively? Or in other words, are you a truly moral being? Why isn't that the first question that's asked? Why isn't that the first question that's asked, ladies and gentlemen? Want to know why? Because most people don't give a damn about that. At all. At all. That's why. That's the truth. I don't need anybody to hypothetically answer the question. I know what the answer to the question is. Because their values aren't based in anything that is a real value. It's based on an illusion called garbage, nonsense, fake fiat money. That is nothing but a control system for the mind and behaviors and emotions. And I guarantee you will get tons of excuses and tons of justifications about that. You know, I'm a misogynist for bringing that up. Don't you know? You know? It's because money is the value system that they have been taught, and that's the value system they've retained. Morals? Oh, who gives a damn? I don't need to know anything about that, you know? Do you condone or support violence against other people by your support of the state? No, I don't need to know anything about that. Because invariably 99.9% of these people all do support the state. They're statists. Now, here's my question, folks. Let's get to the underlying psychological factor that's going on there. Let's get to the underlying psychological causal agent, the causal factor of what's taking place in the manipulated, conditioned female psyche. Again, folks, one of the things I want to re-emphasize that I talked about last week is we have to understand that this is not human nature. And many men are absolutely just as brainwashed and conditioned and mind-controlled and socially engineered. You know, we've pretty much struck a nerve when it comes to the dynamic that I'm talking about regarding neo-feminism and the socially conditioned mindset of the overwhelmingly vast majority of women in our society, and the value system that really shows that most people are in, which is no values at all. You know, it's the worship of money, and moreover than that, it's deeply beyond that, because we have to get past just the symptoms and understand what the underlying social psychological factors that are really going on in most people's minds, okay, especially the female mind, which is part of an overwhelmingly important part of what perpetuates statism in our society and perpetuates everything that goes along with statism, which is the continued condoning of violence and oppression and slavery in our world. And I'm going to put out there the argument that the overwhelming mass of females in our society want that to continue. They love the state. They cannot get enough of it. And I'm not saying that most men aren't statists as well, because they most certainly are. But I'm saying it's almost entirely has a hold over women's minds, as opposed to men who seem to be coming out of the statist mindset a lot faster. I know that's a controversial statement to make, but look, the numbers are there in the observation. Just go out and look at who's out there telling the truth about statism as being a complete illusion. How many men are doing that versus how many women are doing that? I mean, I don't think anybody would call into this show or try to debate at all anywhere that the overwhelming numbers of people involved in the truth movement are men. The ratio is wildly skewed. If I had to guess, I would say it's a minimum of 10 to 1. And I'm probably being extraordinarily generous in that estimation. I'd say more likely than not, it's actually closer to 20 to 1. Which it speaks volumes. All you have to do is go out in any group of activists and observe. And I'm talking about for really things that are anti the state. Of course, there are activist groups that are comprised largely of women. I'm talking when it comes down to telling the real truth about this entire corrupt, immoral system. Because most women gain benefit from that system from being in place and want it to continue. They don't want the state to come down. It's why the state is constantly, trying to justify their existence in their minds and tell them how much they need them, because it is like the state's trying to prop itself up as the actual real masculine man image, and say, you need us. And here's the underlying psychological dynamic that I'm talking about. What are we really talking about, folks? Why does a woman in a first interaction with a male ask the question, what do you do for a living? What's being actively sought psychologically? What are they revealing about their condition that they're in? Let me just say this as an aside. Do you know there are people who I know and have known for years that I still don't know what they do, quote, for a living? I hate that term. What do you do for a living? As if you wouldn't be able to live without doing this, As if somehow all of life is dependent on the flow of money and whether you're in some corporate slave job. I hate the term, what do you do for a living? For a living. What do I do for the fake garbage Federal Reserve notes that people so believe in as a religion? As a false religion? That morons believe in as a false religion? So, I lost my train of thought there. I was saying, the underlying psychological dynamic that, is going on here. And how wildly, skewed truth-telling is in the truth movement. And the ratio that exists between men and women, this dynamic of, what do you do for a living? Where is that coming from? I mean, I was saying there are people who I know who I have never even asked that question to. I've never posed the question to actual friends that I have, people that I've known for years. I've actually gone up to them and said, how long have I known you? And someone replied to me, oh, about 5 or 6 years now, it's got to be. And I said, I have no idea what type of job you do during the day at all. Never asked them one time, because I don't care about that. Why would I care about what fake nonsense that someone is made to go through, is coerced really to go through, okay, by this society to make, absolutely fake nonsense money that isn't backed by any real intrinsic value whatsoever? Why would I care what someone who's in the same basic slavery position as I'm in when it comes to having to have an amount of that dynamic in your life to be able to just get any food or services at all? Okay? And why would that be somehow determining what, how I interact with that person? I'm not concerned about what somebody does for their job at all in any way, because that's not what makes somebody a person I want to know or not at all in any way. I honestly don't care what they do, as long as I know that they're a good person and they're fighting the good fight of freedom and getting involved in doing the great work. in some capacity. That's what I care about. I want to know whether someone's awake. I want to know whether someone knows what's going on in the world. I want to know whether someone is conscious. I want to know whether someone cares about what's going on in the world. Not how many fake Federal Reserve notes they can accrue. There are people in my life who I've known for years I've never even posed the question to. I don't know what they do and I don't even want to know. And yet this is the first and foremost things on the minds of most people. Because what they are trying to get at is how much money do you make? And that there's a reason for that. Psychologically, what's going on in their mind? Now, I want to go to another caller and ask them this question. Okay?
I think
okay, so now what is that dynamic psychologically? Financial stability translates psychologically to what in the mind?
Maybe having someone to help take care of you, someone who will, make the, take away the problems.
Right.
Make things
what
a
are
lot
these
easier
all
for
forms
you.
of? Get to the actual word. Tell me what this is all a form of seeking.
I'm not really sure, actually, because
well, if you want financial stability, if you want somebody to take quote care of you, okay, if you want there to be resources present when you need them, tell me what you're psychologically seeking. Are you psychologically seeking goodness and virtue? Are you psychologically seeking morality? Are you psychologically seeking freedom?
No,
no, and no. Okay,
problem.
correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. The answer to those questions are no. Well, then what is being sought?
Well, it's almost like an exchange. Women who buy into this, and believe me, I'm not one of them, but women who buy into this, it's basically they're exchanging their liberty and their freedom for a false sense of security, a false sense of, it's going to all work out. I'm not going to.
You just said it. Thank you. Donna, you just said the word I was looking for. Security. Mm-hmm. Or, in other words, safety. Security
right.
Or safety. That's what's psychologically being sought.
Yeah. No.
Now.
Yeah.
Now. Now, and I'm going to let you go on that note, and I want to thank you for calling and allowing me to ask you a question blindly, and thank you so much for exploring that dynamic with me. Hold on the line if you want to get back to asking a question or making a comment if and when I take calls later in the show. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Mark.
You got it. So there's the dynamic, folks. Safety. Now, the next question becomes, psychologically, what kind of people, first and foremost, are looking for safety over any higher values of women in society who are focused on simply, what a guy does for a living, and we talked about I did a social experiment of this being asking 76 people what the first question a woman asks a man in an encounter between a woman and a man who have just first met after the initial pleasantries are exchanged. What does the woman invariably ask the man first? And 76 out of 76 people answered, what do you do for a quote, living? You can't get that kind of agreement on what color the sky is during the day. And so, I asked the question, well, why is that? What are they seeking psychologically? What's going on in the psyche that would make someone be so conditioned and so focused on that dynamic first out of all the other things you could possibly know about a human being? And the answer is what they're seeking is safety, security. Because in their minds, in their socially conditioned minds, money translates to security in society. Now, that obviously is not true because we're going into a police state, where violence is everywhere. You're not safe just because you have a lot of money. We're losing our freedom, and that makes you not safe. People don't understand there's no such thing as safety. There's no such thing as guarantee of safety. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. And there you have what I'm trying to establish here. Socially engineered people like this, and particularly this extraordinarily socially engineered aspect of society, namely modern, inauthentic, conditioned women,